Hello. If you've heard of a WMS and you're curious, what is a warehouse management system? Do I need it for my brand? How does it help me? Am I ready for it? Is this something I need, or can I keep using ShipStation or printing labels off Shopify? What are the upsides? What are the downsides? This video is where we're going to talk about that. In my past, I sold Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu apparel. Went through a similar journey. The idea of a WMS seemed very intimidating to me. So websites with no pricing seemed like something that it would way too hard for me to implement. I was afraid to get on a salesperson call with a salesperson and get quoted, 6 figures to start. Didn't have that sort of money. Didn't want to look stupid. So stuck for a long time with a simple system where we just tracked inventory on the sales platform. You sold it, you have one less. And then to ship the orders, just printed labels and hand them to a bunch of people. Initially myself, then 2 people, then 4 people. Once it got to 6 or 8 people, things started to really go downhill, where we were getting fewer orders out with 8 people than we were with 4. But that was my journey. I want to bring Alex into the conversation as well. So Alex, you could join me. Alex founded Black Wolf Nation and had a similar journey. And Alex, I think you started with ShipStation, right?
ShipStation and Excel. Yeah.
ShipStation and Excel. Never lose with Excel. And then at some point, you started to run into some challenges. Started to Google, same thing. Google your problem. I need ShipStation, but better. I need ShipStation plus inventory. Actually, what I looked for, I'll take the stage for one second. What I looked for was, I want a system that's just going to tell everyone what to do. That was my dream. Thinking back on that dream, I didn't know what inventory I had in the building. I didn't know what employees I had in the building. I didn't know what the employees could do. I didn't know where my stock was. The idea that some magical system was going to go straight from that to just giving people tasks on the fly and just running my building was a bit preposterous and a bit immature thinking. But that was where sort of what I started when I eventually stumbled on the idea of a warehouse management system to solve my problems. For you, when you were at ShipStation, using ShipStation, at what scale did you say, man, there's got to be something better?
So it was actually surprisingly early on. We had decided to open our own warehouse for our brand. We were at 50 orders a day maybe. But what drove me absolutely crazy is every Friday I asked our warehouse manager, who was in a different country in the US, I was still in Canada, to do a cycle count every Friday because our system didn't track our inventory. And then over the course of months, started to miss Fridays, or then what we would run into is I'd get an inventory count, we'd make purchase decisions from it, and then we'd go to ship an order and they'd say, oh, suddenly 2 pallets of products gone. And I was like, there's got to be something.
So let me unpack that. So just to bring that back, the idea is I have items in my warehouse. I have zero confidence that I know it's in my warehouse. So I physically have someone walk around with a pen and paper and start counting things, which people are not very good at counting, which is, again, something very similar I had, which is I would put something on sale because I'm like, man, I got a lot of stock on this. I put it on sale. As soon as the sale drops, I got 30 orders. I can't find any of them. I don't know where it is.
Yeah.
Which is a horrible experience. But think about all the information you need to know what you have in your warehouse. You have, right? You should be able, it's a question you should be able to answer.
Yeah, but it's not, the thing is, maybe if you have a brand with 1 SKU, you can track it. But as soon as you have even 10 SKUs, if you're in e-com, you're doing bundles, upsells, you have product coming in, you have damages. You think you can track it, but if you go to any sort of scale, you're going to run into all those problems.
Yeah, what I always hated was we would make a shipping mistake. So we would have two items left, one of each unit SKU. We would ship the wrong one. We made a mistake. But then we would sell the other one. Then we wouldn't have it. So the cascade error, and then we would end up with that other one there for 3 years later. We checked, we're like, wait, we thought we sold that 3 years ago. I was like, oh no, we misshipped it. We didn't ship it, we shipped something else. So you end up from that one error, this cascade of massive errors, because you're not actually tracking inventory. But anyway.
Exactly. And I started off as a brand and became a 3PL, and that took those problems times 10, right?
Because 3PL is a third-party logistics company who ships not only for your own brand, but you ship for other brands.
Right. If it's my own brand, maybe your inventory is off a little. It's a huge pain point and you should not have that. But if you have someone else's product and their whole business in your hands, it gets really, really dicey if you're relying on Excel.
Yeah. What really set it off for me, the search, was the labor aspect. So there was 2 issues that I would find. One is I would get orders and the stock would be somewhere up in a pallet, right? So we'd have shelves to pick the stock. But at some point, you're ordering more than 1 case at a time, right? We were manufacturing our items in Pakistan. So I would get 4 cases. One would be on the floor. When that case sold out, there'd be 3 more up on a shelf. So they get a piece of paper, they would go, the item's not here. Okay, I need one more. They would literally climb up in the palace, pretend we didn't know that. And then they grab one item, sometimes, right? Because they just need to pick that one order. They grab one item, come back down, ship the order. There was another guy who was right behind them picking a different order for a different customer, also needed that item. He or she would go up and get the other one. And I'm seeing this happening all day. People go to the same spot, taking 5-6 minutes to grab one item, and just again and again and again. So that was one labor aspect that drove me absolutely insane. And the other one that really triggered me was we had some orders that were hard to pick, right? So they had many items. Some of the items were older. They were harder to get. They were further back. Employees would take those orders that were hard to pick and literally stuff them in a shelf under an item so that no one knew they had the order. We weren't tracking who got the order. So they were like, nah, I'm not gonna do that one. And then we go and find out for 2 or 3 days. And typically those were like our biggest orders. Those were our best customers, but their orders were a pain in the butt to pick. So they wouldn't do them. And I had no way of knowing. I knew someone was doing that, but I didn't know who. Like, how am I going to track it, right? Unless I start writing down now, person A got order 1. Person, like now, like that's literally what I had to do to identify this problem versus like a warehouse management system. Like someone has an iPad, they get order A, like there's no way to not ship that. You can't go to the next order, right? Unless there's an error, which you have to log, it's all tracked and all that. So anyway, so those were 2 things that like, just as a neurotic owner, right? As my business is my money, those things drove me absolutely insane. And I was like, I need to solve that. I couldn't sleep at night with like that just being a lingering problem. So that was it for me. I know you had some things where you were worried more about on the shipping cost side, or what was it on your end that was like, this can't keep going this way?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, on the labor side, I was very, tight on margin. And when you invest all this money in warehouse and you start going Uline and buy your first few packing stations, it starts to really hurt when your warehouse team, you're like, there's no way you can't get those orders out. And they're telling you, no, we need one more person. We need another person. It's like, well, 2 months ago, you were able to do it with 3 people. Why do you need 6? And that's a huge source of conflict when you don't have any visibility into what's going out on the floor. And on the same token with margin, shipping cost. So with ShipStation, we used all the automation rules based on zone and weight to try and guess the right carrier for each package. But what we learned is in auditing all of our shipments is like, wait, why did this one cost $12? Oh, because it's a, rural address and there's a surcharge, but there wouldn't have been a surcharge with this carrier. And we were just like, there's got to be $2 of shipping cost that if we just pick the right carrier, that we can easily get off the table.
I had an employee that would just put like, instead of weighing items, his scale wasn't working at some point, he would just put 5 pounds. He would just say it's 5 pounds because that was easier and everything was 5 pounds. So, you would get audited and sometimes it's higher, sometimes lower, but sometimes you're just paying 5 pounds on a 1 pound package because like he would just press 5. So this is how a WMS helps you. So typical example is if you're just tracking your inventory in Shopify, you go to a shelf, there's 1 unit, you go in Shopify, you say there's 1 unit available for sale, but then there might be an order that was already in the system for it. So a picker is going to come, grab that item, ship it, but you said there was 1 available for sale. So now another customer is going to buy that item. And instead of that customer buying an item you could actually fulfill and make money on, instead, now that you have an angry customer who thought they were going to get a certain item, and then you have to follow up and tell them you don't have it there.
Especially if you don't have a WMS and you're printing your labels in the morning, you might print 2 orders for that item. And then when you go to ship it, only realize that you have 1. Now you have to void the label, right? Reach out to the customer, and it's just a mess, right?
Right. So at the core, what a WMS does is it keeps track of what inventory is in the building, whether that's in a pickable location or not. And we'll talk about that. And what orders there are that need to be fulfilled and what the status of those are, if they're picked or not. So when we talk about pickable and unpickable, it sounds very complicated, but the way to think of it is like when you started, you probably manufactured, you didn't have 1 case on the floor, right? Like there's probably some stock pickable and some stock, I don't know, up top, pallet.
We can't, if we get a load of, we used to get 10 pallets when we did a run. We only had room for 1 on the floor. The rest were up in the racks.
So what happens is you print an order and it's got 5 items. The first 4, you walk around, you grab you grab them. When you get to the last one, it's not there. The pallet's empty, right? Because there's nothing, when you print the label, nothing stops you from going to an empty location, right? So now it's empty. You don't know what to do. The picker is stalled. They have 2 options. Go find the item, right? Go ask someone else to find the item. In either case, they're stopped and someone else needs to fix something for them or someone needs to fix something for them in real time. Or even worse, they leave the order with those 4 items with a piece of paper on it and pray that someone doesn't lose that paper and it comes back later, right? So
exactly. And when I started my warehouse, it's not like we had a dedicated forklift driver. My manager was the only one certified on the forklift. So now they're stopping what they're doing, and now they have to go find this, pull down a pallet for this picker. So it's just, everyone's just stopped, and it's cost a lot in labor too.
Yeah. So super straightforward and simple. What a warehouse management system does is it knows that for this order, we don't have all the items pickable. So instead of sending a picker to go grab as many as they can, instead it sends inventory person to put the stock in a pickable location. Once that location has the items, now that's pickable, it automatically releases those orders. So the picker goes and grabs it, and they don't even know that that order was held until it's ready, because they're just picking like normal. And the net result is you get 150 units picked per hour from your pickers. And that's not like, during a perfectly timed everything's right. That's your
any day, all day.
All day, every day. That's what everyone should be doing. You've got a number to be accountable, which is something else, which I'm sure you had inconsistent performance between employees, which was much more obvious once you have a WMS, but really hard to tell when you're just handing out papers.
Yeah, between employees, yeah. But even the same employee week to week or day to day, it's like, they'll walk in one week, be super motivated, knock out a ton of orders, and then suddenly the next day they're doing 20 orders an hour. It's like, what happened?
Yeah, it's like you're playing golf, but you're not keeping score. Like, you're usually not going to get people's best performance that way.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's one thing I love about having a WMS is like you can actually control your inventory. What else is it that like went from like not very good to like, all right, this works when you adopted a real WMS?
So we're like most e-com brands, we have a lot of vendors. I'm ordering bottles from overseas, filling in the US. I have Uline supplies. It's all coming in. My warehouse doesn't necessarily know the commercial invoice that I sent over. They just get what they get. And they might miscount, there might be a delay in receiving. So the first huge benefit for us was, hey, our purchase orders are in our WMS. When that product comes in, they're receiving off of a purchase order. If I paid for 10,000, I don't want my warehouse just signing a BOL for 8,000. Like, what happened? So that was a huge benefit for us to be able to go back to our vendors, go back to the warehouse, and make sure that what we ordered is what we got.
Yeah, and those terms might seem complicated, but all it is you go in the system, you say, I ordered 10 of this, 50 of this, 60 of this. The person in the warehouse says, I got 10 or I got 8 or I got 12, right? And then you know what to do. So it's super straightforward, super simple. And if you don't have it, you don't find that what you typically would do is if you order 10, you just add 10 to your inventory in Shopify. If you actually got 8, you find out when you run out and you get 2 angry customers. And if you got 12, which does happen, you never sell those. So you end up with your money sitting on a shelf and probably losing value, right? Because it might be last season's, it might be a product you discontinue, and now you don't even sell it. And it's just throwing away money because you just don't actually know what you have.
Yeah, and you might be listening saying, oh, I have a simple supply chain, I have one vendor, they send me stuff. But think about this. You don't just receive one PO a year. You're constantly getting things, constantly shipping. So now you stumble upon a mistake. If you're just adding inventory to Shopify or in ShipStation, it's deducting, you have no clue where that error happened. It could have happened months ago, and you're only realizing now because you're down to your last pallet. And that happened to us like too many times. We can talk about horror stories for days, right?
The big picture way you reduce some of these horror stories is by having accountability. So the idea of having things happen that are not tracked is how you have problems, right? If no one's accountable for an action, you generally are more likely to have an issue. Versus in a WMS, it just forces everything to go through a system. And the system's not there to add a lot of checks and a lot of buttons, but someone's doing the action on a tablet or on a computer. So it just automatically tracks like what they did, who shipped the order. That means when you have someone who's consistently making a mistake, you can address it. But what that means even better than that is you generally have fewer people making mistakes, because if you know you're being tracked, you know, hey man, I'm lazy, it's 5 o'clock, I want to get out of here. I'm just going to stuff whatever this is in this bag and it's going to look horrible and the customer's going to be pissed off, but like, whatever, I want to go home. You can't get away with that when that customer service complaint comes in and it says, employee X packed that order. Like, they know that's what happens. They know they're accountable, and accountability drives success.
Yeah, and think about it like this. Like, You had an e-com business, I have an e-com business. Everything you do in e-com, the benefit of e-com is you know who your customer is, you know what specific ad set in Facebook is performing versus not. You need that same visibility in your warehouse so that you can adjust. And you know, if your customer service is getting complaints that every order, that a bunch of orders are missing this one SKU, if you don't know who packed it, when, where they pulled the inventory from, you can't solve any problems. You're just kind of blind.
You might feel like, hey, man, we can't, it's just not possible. Like, we're always going to have mistakes, and it's just not correct. Like, you will be accurate. You'll have errors less than 1 out of every 1,000 orders, right? So that's a big difference from if you're having an error every 100 orders right now or more. So it will drive performance increase for your business. Your business will run better, and you as an operator will have more mind share to focus on ads, product development, customer service, retention, new R&D, versus like always being stressed about like, I don't know what's going on in the building. Like, I get all these niggling little errors. I don't really understand what's going on. So that mind share is also worth a lot. Any other advantages we talk for a WMS before we talk about how you adopt WMS?
Yeah, I think another big one for me when I signed up for ShipHero was everything that we talked about is exponentially more complicated with bundles. If I sell, it's a skincare brand. If we sell an oily skin bundle that has 2 products, the problem you have is in the warehouse, I have sold 1 unit of that in Shopify on my sales platform. But in reality, in the warehouse, I've gone to 2 different locations and pulled 2 different products. And that makes, just uploading inventory and pushing it to Shopify it will be wrong every single time.
Right. And if you're doing food, you have to have lot tracking, expiration dates, first in, first out. There's also things like we have a lot of artists and people that have limited edition drops. You want to make sure that if you have limited stock, it goes to the first person that ordered it. You have next day air orders. You want to make sure those go out before later ones. So it's a lot of little things. The more complex your business is, the more advantage of a WMS. But even if it's pretty basic, you'll see a big advantage of a WMS when you hit scale. So what does that mean? Like, when do you start thinking about it? For me, I needed it at 5 employees. Like, for you, what was the trigger point that said, like, I need a WMS?
We were at 4 employees. My first and best employee was sitting at her computer all day, sifting through the queue and ship station. So then she wasn't managing the employees. And that's when problems started to happen. And I was like, if we don't find a solution, every time I grow, we're going to have mistakes. We're going to have wrong inventory. And I'm like, we just can't run like that.
Right. And from a cost perspective, like, you shouldn't be spending a lot up front. It should be basically a monthly fee, I think around $2,000 a month starting. So when you think about what is it saving me in terms of labor, like, if it's going to save you more than $30,000 a year in labor, like, it's going to pay for itself. And
think about that. That's less than 1 employee in today's market that you can save. So what was for me the big decision, the big aspect that drove me to easily make this decision, you can take any aspect, rate shopping, no lost inventory to pay for the software, but just mistakes. The number I used is every single mistake costs us our AOV. So our average order value, which means the average amount someone's buying on our site, let's say it's $30. Every single time we misshipped something, that's a $30 mistake. If you're paying, depending on where your warehouse is, between $15 and $25 an hour, if they make 1 mistake an hour, that doubles your labor cost. And that's the point that we got to. And I was like, you just can't have that.
All right, so let's say I'm convinced. Like, I love the idea, but I've seen all your videos, and man, they're really complicated. You do all these crazy things, super cool, but like, that seems like way too much work. Like, I'm busy all day. Like, I just realistically, like, I can't stop my warehouse, implement carts and totes and packing stations and overstock and replenishment. I don't have a big enough team. No one knows how to do anything. So like, help me solve that.
So 2 things that I love about ShipHero. One is, Aaron and the team, they didn't build it just to work for their business. Initially, it was like that, but it's been around 10 years, they have evolved it to work for a lot of operations. So when we came on board, probably 5 years ago now, I didn't want to spend the money on racks. I didn't have bins. I didn't want to pay for packing stations. So we didn't even pick our orders. We just let ShipHero service up the next order according to our priorities, and we shipped it. But then
order queue.
Yeah, exactly. It's called, order queue. And then over time, in a very short amount of time, ShipHero software actually guided me to the best practices. Then I started adding receiving, and then I added totes, and then I added, inventory put away. And so you can really start ShipHero as like a ShipStation or a Shippo or a Pirate Ship Plus immediately. But then it can become as powerful as, all the ones that you don't even know their names because they're too expensive, can do. And that's what we're standing in now is, a warehouse that can do 10,000 orders a day with the same software as when we were doing 50 orders a day.
Yeah, so the way it's usually a couple of weeks basically to get up and running. You're not stopping shipping. It works really easy to transition from existing software, from Shopify, from ShipStation. And when I say Shopify, I'm just talking about like printing on the Shopify backend. Obviously, you're still doing your sales on Shopify. So usually phase one is people are just shipping the same way as they did, but they usually add scanning. You don't actually have to. You can do it without barcodes also. But usually people really like that as a first step. It's like, okay, let's scan. Next step is I want to be able to pick multiple orders at the same time. So usually a cart, we have a bunch of simple videos. It might seem complex. It's not. And I want to just pick 10, 15, 20 orders at a time instead of one so I get more efficient. Then people start to really get into the inventory where they're like, hey, yeah, when things are great, the orders fly. But my inventory is wrong. They're going to place, like the inventory is not right. That's when people say, okay, well, what if I do a receiving process? It's really straightforward. Instead of just adding things in inventory manually, I just have a purchase order where people say how many they came in. Maybe they scan the items so they can select. Just the way it works. And then slowly people start working their way through the warehouse and changing locations to say, hey, this is unpickable versus pickable. So we have the replenishment flow. People say, hey, why don't I just do a cycle count? Let me count the items, see what they're right. Again, instead of counting the items in Shopify where unless you stop selling, they're automatically wrong because there's new sales coming in. Now there's a process that updates it that doesn't disrupt the rest of your flow. And typically 3 or 6 months later, now you're a whole different world, right? Like the software allows you to do that where it's like you don't have to do all the work to get where you want to go. You just do it in stages and eventually get there. And then what did you find as sort of like the time where you sort of felt like, hey, this warehouse can actually run? Like I don't have to be there every day thinking about like warehouse problems.
Yeah, so a few things. One is a warehouse is a never-ending project. You really have to love logistics to want to do this on your own. If you hate logistics or don't have someone in your top management that likes it, just outsource it. But
get a 3PL.
Exactly.
Let someone else do it.
Because it's 18 hours a day for years. But really, once we were able to come up with our basic systems where the warehouse could run and all that knowledge wasn't in a manager, we actually went through 3 managers until I have my current one who's been here for 2 years. But only once we were able to continue to grow, but also change our management because we had the processes, could I find the right management and then not have to be out on the floor all day. And there's a few milestones. One was a better receiving process, which I actually got from one of the ShipHero videos on YouTube. And then, we have shipping containers. We have all these features that prevent headaches and errors. And it's like, once your customer service stops blowing you up, that's when you can kind of relax and take a step back and, or at least relax and take a breath and focus on if you can cut costs further.
Yeah, for me, it was 2 things. One is me feeling like the scaling plan for the company didn't have logistics as one of the inputs, where it was like, all right, well, how much inventory can I afford? How much marketing can I do? Like, what's the market size? What's pricing? Where before it was like, I don't think I could get out this many orders, so like I could only sell that many orders, right? So that was a big shift that just changed the way I thought about the business. So that was one. And the other was, we do like this one sale once, like 10 times a year, we do a big sale. And I used to always brace for like the week after the sale, the massive customer service complaints. Why didn't my order ship? I got the wrong item, etc. I used to dread those because I didn't want to run the sale because I didn't want to deal with the customer service fallout the next week. And at some point, I wasn't dreading that anymore. I realized it was like, oh, okay. And that gave me so much more confidence in growing my business, where I'm like, there's always going to be problems in every part of your business, but like they were manageable problems. They were normal problems versus like being scary problems.
Yeah. And even I have an interesting story about, e-com, any group of orders or customers, we call a cohort. So at one point, after we had already started with ShipHero, we knew that we were going to be backordered. And in the past, we had to sift through all of our orders one by one and say, oh, is this backordered? Is this one backordered? But with ShipHero, we could see all of our orders. We could see which ones are backordered, filter by what product was backordered. So what we actually did is, it was our body wash, which is our bestseller. We were over 10,000 orders were in backorder because the production run was delayed. In ShipHero, we were able to filter for that, export all those orders upload those email addresses to a Klaviyo cohort, which is an email marketing tool. And then we sent an email from my brother partner's email personally and said, hey, like the interns, they didn't order the right amount. We're so sorry. You know, it's going to ship on this date. And to this day, that is our most profitable, highest lifetime value cohort, because you actually, even if you do go out of inventory, you actually at least know what the scope of the problem is and can do something about it.
So I'll sum it up by saying a warehouse management system just allows you to put in place a process that is simple and sane and tracks what's going on. That's all it is. It's not a magic AI that's going to tell everyone what to do. I've been in 1 million square foot buildings and none of them have a magic AI that tells everyone what to do. That's the truth. It's always a warehouse manager, but what you get with a warehouse management system is the information so that the people on the floor can do their job. They know what to do, and they have the tools, and they're empowered to do it. So don't think of it as a silver bullet that's going to solve everything. Think of it as a tool that allows you to build out the processes. And if you use ShipHero, we have a lot of videos walking through all the processes. But it's enabling technology that you build your processes around, and that's how you scale up. And we have customers, again, starting at 50 orders a month, but we have customers that have done hundreds of thousands of orders a day using the exact same technology, because the basics of a warehouse don't really change that much as you scale. The reason why people have trouble as they scale is they just haven't implemented the basic processes to allow data accuracy and control. Once you have those, scaling becomes much less of a technical problem and much more of a, like, do I have enough stock? Do I have enough space? Do I have enough people problem? And that's what you want, right? You want a linear ability to scale your business, not a technology limiting way to grow your business. So any last thoughts?
As my last thought, I would say we're business owners and we talk about the benefits to the business, but also remember, with the WMS and the tools, our team has confidence that they're not going to make mistakes. It sucks to put in a whole hard week's worth of work, and then your manager comes and says, hey, last week you made 20 errors, but they didn't have the tools to prevent that. So I think that's a huge benefit for the morale of the team.
All right. Thank you, Alex. If you watched this whole video, thank you very much. And if you want to see more details on like how you do this, right, how you implement the process, just check out our channel. We keep putting out more content, and just keep watching.